first episode of Who Are the People in Your Neighborhood? And today I am very pleased to have Dr. Marjorie da Costa Diabro. Or did I get that the wrong way around?
Marjorie da Costa Abreu.
Diabro, all right. I put too many D's in there. So, yeah, thank you. Again, today in our conversation, we hope to speak about a number of different things, but I just wanted to start off by asking you to introduce yourself because you obviously know your name better than I do, and to tell me a little about what you do in our neighborhood.
Right. So thank you for having me, Lindy. And my name is Marjorie, as you said. I'm originally from Brazil, and my background is I have been teaching higher education for the last 15 years. And I have done teaching combined with research. So I've always done both, never only one or the other. I have always taught computer science, computer engineering, and IT degrees in general. My main area of teaching is artificial intelligence and then a basic programming. So I love to teach newcomers to those degrees how to program. My research area, it has been artificial intelligence. So I have done a lot of applied artificial intelligence, all levels of artificial intelligence. So from data set analysis, feature extraction, machine learning techniques, and how to implement them, and always applied. So I'm very much interested on understanding the impact of artificial intelligence in real life. So I like to go through different areas and then use those techniques to improve people's life, basically. So that's me. And then I was a lecturer, a senior lecturer in Brazil. And then me and my partner decided it wasn't a very friendly atmosphere last year in Brazil, and we decided to try our life in the UK. So we managed to get lectureship positions. So I am a senior lecturer at the moment in the computing department at Sheffield Hallam University.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if my viewers will be happy or not happy to know that we're not here to talk about machine learning. So I came across Marjorie and some of the CPD, some continuing professional development sessions that I offer. And apart from being local in different countries, we had a shared interest in this whole topic of colorism. And this came about because one of the things we were talking about is how discrimination works. And colorism is, or shadism, as it's sometimes called, is a form of prejudice or discrimination, usually from members within the same ethnic group. But it can happen, as we can see from some research I found, across the board. And basically, it means that people are treated differently based on the social implications and the cultural meanings that are attached to skin color. And this, to some extent, explains, and I didn't know about Brazil, but in the African continent and some parts of Asia, India, skin lightening creams and pills and injections that promise to lighten skin color are very popular, even though they are illegal. So, can you tell me, because I mean, I don't know, how has colorism affected you? What kind of sparked your interest in this?
Well, we always hear about racism, and I don't know. I know Brazil has this very, wrong. Everybody has this very wrong perception from Brazil that Brazilians are friendly and nice and they love everybody. But unfortunately, Brazil it's a very, very racist, sexist, misogynist country. So especially if you go to the poorest regions, which were the ones that had the most, slavery intake. So the north and the northeast of Brazil, we have a very strong feeling of racism. But in Brazil, it's slightly different than what you would have like in Africa or in countries that you have the majority of the population, as you said, with darker skin color. In Brazil, the racism is more associated with African features. So not only skin color. So if you go to Brazil now, you won't see very, very dark people. especially if you go to like the south of Brazil, even the northeast of Brazil. You see a lot of, brown, let's call it brown people, and then different shades of brown. But the main thing that is very strong in Brazil related to racism are the features. So if you have curly hair or African styled hair, you can suffer racism. If you have a broader nose, thicker lips, if you have the shape of your body that is more associated with Black African women, for instance, if you are a woman. So the racism goes on that direction. And then you have all sorts of, like, the language is fully loaded with racist expressions. So so we call, I'll give you a very simple example, and they all come from the slavery time. So we have the side desk of the bed. So you have your bed, and sometimes you have a side, cupboard or drawer. So we call that in Brazil mute uh, cupboard, or some, if you do the direct translation. And this means that in the slavery time, a slave would stay by the bedside of the slave master, quiet, without making any noise. That therefore you have the mute, holding like a jug of water or something like this. So a lot of words, and you don't realize this when you are growing up, a lot of words, a lot of expressions, and a lot of behavior replicates the racism. And then how can you experience this? So nobody in Brazil is white. White in the sense that Europeans identify themselves as whites, or like North Americans. Nobody is white. You always have a descendant that was a slave, or you were like, one of your grandmothers was raped by a slave master, and then she was black and he was white, and then the color, this light got lighter, the skin color, and then you might look white, but you are not white because you have the features, the broader nose and the thick lips and everything. So how does this slavery, like the prejudice, the racism, manifest itself? So in a very obvious way, if you have a really dark skin, you have the same kind of, ridiculous slave racist behaviors as you have anywhere else around the world. But like, I'll give you an example related to my life. So my mother was white. She passed away, and my father is black. So he has really dark skin, and my mother was really white. She has relatives in her family that have blue eyes, red hair. So it's a strong mixture. So in my case, I am, in some parts of Brazil, I am white. In other parts of Brazil, I am brown. So because I am the mixture of those two colors, I have African features, some like related to the nose, my lips and everything. And then my skin color can be judged differently in different parts of Brazil. But because I was born as this mixture, I don't have straight hair, which is something very much associated with, Europeans. So they all have straight hair. So when I was a child, and up to when I was a teenager, I would sleep with a net in my head, so it would keep my hair straight, even though I have curly hair. Or when I do makeup, I used to try to make my nose thinner because I thought thinner nose were more beautiful than, the broader nose that most people have. So it's a bit more subtle, but it's like a prison that you see yourself, because you have to do so many things to be accepted in the society. Another example from my own life. I was fortunate enough to be able to study in a private school when I was a child. Even though my parents didn't really have the financial means, they managed to work around, and I was studying in this school. So I knew a lot of rich, middle class, higher class people, white as they consider themselves. So I never fit in. I was never like accepted, even though I might look white for some people there. I was always, poor, didn't have the same clothes. So it's all a social thing. And this social thing, the socio-economical differences, is what is very striking, very strong in Brazil. Even more, I would say, than the actual skin color. So this is my perception, and this is why it's so interesting for me to be living in the UK. But because in the UK, I'm obviously not white. I might be
Mhm.
something else. I might be confused as an Indian person or as an African person, but I'm not white. And this actually, the first time I realized I wasn't the standard white person was when I came to the UK into 2007 to do my PhD. When I look around and I said, yeah, I'm not. And then I realized that I wasn't. I actually started to think at that point, oh my God, I was living a lie or something like this. So this
So
is this is my perception.
this is part of your journey of moving from covering your hair to sort of becoming embracing who you were as.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah, so that's living in life. It's interesting that, yeah, you've touched on so many things. To some extent, people say, oh, slavery was over. Why are still people still, just get over it? But it's so much a part the of who we are now that we cannot escape. That even now you have language that's revolved around slavery. I think it was quite interesting that even though you might be light skinned, if you have the features if there's any, like as they say, one drop of recognizable blood of African descent, you still experience prejudice. And definitely it shows that even though Brazil, we don't associate necessarily, as you said at the beginning, Brazil with that. We think of samba, we think of, all these exotic, which again is a type of colonialism, any, all these exotic images, but we don't think of the realities, of the lived realities of the people that are there. And I remember reading about the first Black Samba queen, the and the struggles she had in being accepted, and how much flack she got from Brazilian people because she was picked as the samba queen to lead the parade for Carnival. So it's there, and we do take notice. But one of the things that I have realized is that it's happening between us as people of colors, of people who we are judging ourselves. So the other thing that stood out was how we internalize the racism that has been fostered upon us, how we internalize this sense that of inferiority or of difference or wanting to make your nose look thinner. But arguably, I've seen videos online where white girls are doing the same thing to make their nose look thinner as well. So it's
Everybody suffers. Everybody
yeah,
suffers from
yeah,
this kind of, yeah.
yeah. But and I think I guess the difference is that so there's several things going on. So one, but it's all tied up in this idea of white supremacy. So what are our views of beauty? What counts as beauty? How do we then try to replicate that? And how then do we use that even within our groups as a form of discrimination? And I think I shared with you, you can even see that sort of discrimination when you look at the degree of warning gap statistics. And just generally speaking, the closer you are to white, the closer you are to achieving good honors in a very crude way of putting it.
Mm.
So the students who are of African descent from Africa are at the bottom end of the scale, and the students of African descent from the Caribbean right next to them. Whereas on the top of the scale, you will have the in Asians, also the Chinese or the Indians. And we know, as I said before, that Indians from India, they prize light skin as well. And that's a whole other um, half an hour, hours, yeah, millennia of discussion with that. But and I think it's not just about vanity. A study in 2011 found that even within the legal system, light-skinned Black women receive shorter prison sentences than dark-skinned Black women. In employment, white interviewers regarded light-skinned Black and Hispanic job applicants as more intelligent than darker-skinned ones with the same qualifications. And there's even in terms of progression. a gap in career opportunities between dark and light skinned women in India. So, and in dating, it's virtually non existent unless it's a kind of fetish. You know, you want this idea of this black woman, and this girl who lives in Japan. She's born and she's of African descent. Her parents migrated. She said that one of the stereotypes she has to fight against is this idea that black women are amazing in bed. So there's so many, and that comes again from slavery.
Yeah.
That exotification, if that's a word, of black women for all different reasons. You know, and it so that's why I think, as you said, that this idea of colorism, and it's not something we often discuss openly.
No. And I would like you said we weren't going to talk about machine learning, but since I do study
Yes.
machine learning, and then one of my specialities is actually data analytics, what does it mean? It means that from a set of data, I can create a mathematical model that will automatically predict something from that data. So the example you gave is a very, standard one. So if I want to do an automatic justice system that will suggest sentences from the data they have previously, what does it mean? It
Mm-hmm.
means that it will carry on all the prejudice, all the racism, all the sexism, everything from that data, if I'm using that standard data, to
Mm-hmm.
this system. So if you think about video calls, something that we are doing every day. So the video calls, they are used, especially the ones that give you the opportunity to have your background changed. They are trained using standard white faces. So if you are black, if you have a darker skin, or if you have some very different feature that will differ from the data set they use to train this model, your experience using this solution, it's not going to be as good as someone who is white and who has all these standard features. So all this, everything, the prejudice, the white supremacy, and everything we suffer from it is embedded so deeply in society and every single thing we do, that in order for it to change, we all need to change. We all need to understand, even the non-black people, especially the white people, everybody who is in between needs to understand, okay, where do I stand in this, space? How does this affect me, and how can I change to make life better for the future generations? So if I understand that I can suffer a few levels of prejudice, of racism, because of my skin color, even though I'm not to be, to be considered as a black African, or to have a place of speech because I'm not black. This doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that I might not suffer prejudice for being Latina, or for being, darker skin, or for being considered as, if you, depending on the country that you try to, that you go, you might hear, in my case, being Brazilian, you might hear, jokes saying that, oh, maybe you are a prostitute or something. Because as you
Mm-hmm.
said, black African women, they are associated with sex, with, promiscuity, or things like this. And then
Mm-hmm.
Brazilian women as well. So and again, all of this comes from the slavery, that very big mistake that was made so many years ago, and we are all suffering from it. So it's
Yes.
very important for us to understand that it is everywhere, and it is very embedded in our head. And I'm sorry if you don't want to, bad, unlucky, because we will all have to work inside, so we can make the changes inside our heads, inside our everything, so we can put this forward and then try to change our behavior, and then changing the behaviors of others around us. Otherwise this will never end, and it cannot carry on. People are dying. And
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make a small addition in this comment, just to give everybody an idea of how the slavery feeling in Brazil is still so strong. So in Brazil, it's not uncommon, it's less common than before, but it's not uncommon to have maids. So people work in your house, to clean your house, to look after your child or children, I don't know. So it's not uncommon to have that. The first person that died in Brazil, the official first person who died in Brazil from COVID-19 was a maid that worked in a house of a woman who had traveled to Italy. So the woman tested
Mhm.
positive. She stayed at home, self isolated, but she didn't think her maid had the right to self
Stay at
isolate as
home.
well.
Mhm.
So the ladies kept on working. She was over 60. She caught obviously
Mhm.
COVID-19 because in mid March, people weren't really careful, and then she died. The the slave master, the lady, she's alive now. She had COVID, she recovered because she self-isolated. The maid, who didn't have the right to self-isolate, died. Another example, just again to give you an idea, this was in São Paulo, which is the biggest city, as big as London, very cosmopolitan, very modern. But then you go to the northeast, so you have Recife, which is in the northeast, another maid in another situation. So I have this slave master, as we are calling them, that everybody suffered. This was like 2 weeks ago. Everybody, these cases were like almost 40,000 deaths. She didn't think her maid needed to stay at home, as we all know, we all should be. So the maids kept on working, but the schools are not working. So the maid had a
Yeah.
child, an 8-year-old child. So she had to take the boy to work. So she was with the boy at home. She was cleaning and doing this stuff. So the slave master asked this lady to walk the dogs. So the baby, he was a baby, 8-year old is a 5-year-old. He was a child. He stayed with the slave master. So, but he wanted his mother. So what did the slave master did? She put him in the lift on his own. He didn't know how to
Operate.
operate the lift. He went up instead of down because the maid was walking the dog downstairs. He fell from the building and died. And this was 2 weeks ago. And I'm not even going to mention the amount of lives that we lost from lost bullets, because the police keeps on doing incursions in the favelas, in the
Mhm.
slums. So this is ongoing, and this is it's very, if you study sociology and how Brazil
Yes.
operates in general, it's very clear that what the government wants, and what the rich people that see themselves as whites, but they are not. They want the poor and the black to die. And
Mhm.
that's why we don't have social isolation, because the slums don't have space. That's why people have to work, because
That's why
otherwise
you
they
have
don't have any.
slums.
Yeah, so they don't have food to eat. So it's so like disgusting. And if you think that this job of maid was regulated officially 10
Mhm.
years ago. So everybody had the right to work and had all the work rights. But maids who worked in houses to clean everybody's, mess, they didn't have any work rights. And this was regulated like 10 years ago. And it was a big, big thing.
I
But,
can
and a
imagine
lot
the
of,
struggle.
yeah, yeah, and a lot of people were against it and still are. So
Mhm.
it's very, I'm sorry if I'm getting, a bit passionate, but it's a very unfair system. And it's all because of slavery. It's all because
Mhm.
of white supremacy and the feeling that some people think they are better than others.
Mhm. And I'm glad that, to some extent you have identified your areas of privilege. But what I think stands out is what you said earlier, and what you're doing now is that critical evaluation of self and how you're changing your mind, and that owning that you are part of the problem, but what you are trying to do is to become part of the solution. And that's, I think, one of the key messages, and a really nice way for us to end this and to say thank you so much. I'm glad you also talked about the camera, because in my introduction video I mentioned that as well. I tried to explain what you explained about the pixels and picking up the black and all of that. I've always said that cameras are racist and people never, took me seriously, but they are.
They are,
Because
they
of
are.
what you explained. So thank you so much, Marjorie. Yeah, I look forward to working with you again in the future, and I hope that people can take some of your advice to think critically about the situation. You're Brazilian, you're thinking about Brazil, but it doesn't mean that those sorts of situations and inequity in terms of labor, in terms of people's responsibility and people's lives doesn't exist in the UK, because we know it does.